Hi, I'm Vakho, and this is a iGaming accent brought to you by SBC Russia. This is our 12th episode, and for the last 11 episodes, you have coped with me and my guests. Today, I have one more amazing guest, Imeda. First of all, nice to have you, Imeda, here.
Thank you, Vakho. Thank you for having me. I've been following your podcast, and I think we can pair with you for a few more episodes at least.
Yeah, until we close this thing and we move forward. Okay, so first of all, me and Imeda have worked together on one of the biggest companies in Georgia, and he was like first when came to the job, he was my mentor as well for the first few months. He was like running around doing everything, and after that, we learned many things about each other. So today, where I want to start this podcast is like a tradition already. Like Imeda, I would love to ask you and would love to hear one more time about how did you get into this industry and why did you get into this industry?
Good question. How did I get? I think it was a pure chance. Didn't really plan to get into this industry. It was just one of my friends suggested me that but our job where we worked together for many years, they were looking for somebody with the sports knowledge, etc. And obviously, me being a huge sports fan, I was like, okay, I'll take the chance. That was how. Why I got into this industry or why I accepted the job offer was that just my pure love for sports and obviously me not being able to become a professional sports player in any capacity whatsoever. It was the closest thing which could bring me to sports. So I was like happiest ever. I think it was 2015, end of 2014, and I have never looked back since.
I would add one more thing. Like, I don't think that it was by chance. I think that some things are meant to be. So you are one of the persons that I would love to hear more about, that you are living with the sport, right? So, and breathing with the sport. So I met few people like you, to be honest, during my journey and within my friends. Like, when people wake up, the first thing they do, they check scores. They do like a highlight review. They wake up in 4 in the morning. I remember that. How the fuck did you manage to do that? Like waking up at 4 a.m., watching NBA, then going to sleep, then coming to job, working like 9-10 hours of work, and like going back and watching another game. So that is like something that was always mystery for me. So I think that was the passion that you brought into this industry. But where that passion started, so like what was the young years for you in terms of that?
Yeah, obviously, as you said, like you can't really do all this if passion is not driving you. And obviously, my love for sports is unconditional, and yeah, it's just the way it is. And I don't know if we are able to say this on this podcast, but I'm still gonna go ahead and say it. I was, I think, 6 years old when I first made my pet slip.
Yeah, we can
I
say that.
remember, I remember the game, which actually it was Euro 2000. It was England versus Romania, and when Alan Shearer scored the goal, maybe facts need to be double checked, but this is how I remember it. That was my pet slip, first pet slip at at 6 years old, like betting with my lunch money. But on a side note, I've loved sports since childhood. I've been following sports, basketball, football, NFL, and yeah, it's just a pure love towards the game, and this is what drives me even today.
Yeah. So you've been in on marketing side for quite a lot of time, right? Before even coming to this industry. So you worked in marketing and you were like in marketing. But what's changed for last few years? Like you went from being in on operation side of the customer facing product, you went to the service provider side, right? So can you tell me a little bit about that journey as well? How you decided to move to that side and what was the change?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think we need to tell our listeners, people who are watching, that a couple of years ago, together with my friends, we decided to co-found and start the company in a daily fantasy sports vertical. Obviously, this also came out of pure love of loving from sports and just loving the fantasy game. Yes, I've been all my life, I've been on the marketing side, but few years ago when we started this startup, I had to together with our co-founders. You are also a founder of startup, and you understand that
Everything.
everything basically. Yeah, marketing, sales, product, operations, etc., etc. Right now, we're trying to kind of mobilize it in more professional manner, so to speak, like create a structure within the company, split some responsibilities, etc., etc. But startup life is still very interesting, and that's how I had to transform. It's more interesting, as I can say, because you have to cover a lot of things, and as a startup founder, you realize that if you're not gonna do it, nobody else is gonna do it for you. So yeah, here we are.
I think that I have too many things to discuss with you on that side because I can relate to that. So, being a founder and becoming a founder and stepping into the shoes of founder is a total game changer for most of the people. And when people, from my point of view, is that when people say that there should be a balance, like work-life balance and so on and so on, and they thrive towards it, and then they decide to create a company or start a startup,
Yeah,
they
that's
stumble
that's the
upon the
biggest mistake in that manner because as you said, you can relate to this that you can try as much as you want to balance it, but the thing is that it just never leaves your head. Okay, when you are a startup founder and when you're moving closer to burnout, you can wake up on a Wednesday morning and go up in the mountains to ski for one day to release the stress. That's the pro of being a founder. But even on the slopes, it never leaves your head. So it
yeah.
always it's always with you, like a child or a family member. You can't really dictate when do you think about your child or your family member or your loved one. So startup is like that. You can't really dictate, okay, yeah, I'm home. I'm not in the office anymore. I'm not going to think about my startup. It just comes uninvited.
Yeah. Regarding starting a company and starting a startup, I think I would love to also know how was the first, let's say, few months and how was the first year and what was the main challenges there. Let's start with that. And like you've been on the market for 3 years already. Am I mistaken or not?
Yeah, a little bit more than 3 years because we had to pivot.
Yeah.
So it started. It started with a phone call from a very good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
First few months was very, how to say, like just stepping into the unknown territory, right? You have an idea what you want to do, the general concept what you want to do, but when you start to dig deeper, it's like, oh, okay, we also need to do that. Oh, okay, we thought this is different, we have to do this. It's just the exploration phase. I think first year was very tough, a lots of sleepless nights, a lots of time just working, I don't know, 12, 14 hours, just going home, sleeping couple hours and going back into the office and just keep on grinding. But I think the first few years in a startup life is the most interesting ones because it's like everything kind of happens at the same time for everybody. And you're just trying to figure out how to survive basically and how to keep going. And the biggest thing for me and biggest challenge personally for me was that just tell myself that okay, you are on the right track, keep going, because there are times in a founder life, in a startup life, when you just go home and you see like and you're like, oh, what the fuck am I doing? like what did I what did
Questioning.
I
Yeah.
yeah, like questioning everything, like sitting at home just going crazy, like, yeah, like, is this the right thing? Am I
And
on the
imposter
right
syndrome
mind?
fits in another thing like that. Imposter syndrome fits in as well. So, why? But one question here, like, this was before the time that AI hype train arrived, right? And the vibe coding arrived. So this was the time before, like, you had to do all the discovery yourself, all the prototyping yourself, all the like MVP building yourself, and so on and so on. And this is the time that you mentioned also that you had to pivot it. You had to pivot. So can you little bit also explain that because you mentioned that you took a time to discovery, but still stumbled upon the thing that you needed to pivot. And what was the pivot there?
Sure. The thing was that, as I said, like you start with something and then you discover that completely different direction is better. So in our case, it was that we set out on the road to be a B2C brand.
Mm-hmm.
But during the building, during the test live operations, etc., we realized that we could achieve much higher results, much more efficiently in a B2B vertical, right? So that's when we had to pivot. And as you mentioned, AI, yes, right now I can do in 10 minutes email, let's say like simple HTML email, right? So you just give it a prompt and everything, like AI tool writes it for you. And before, like 2 3 years ago, like I had to uh, keep, I have no technical skills whatsoever, like coding wise, right? You know, conceptually maybe yes, but technically no. But I had to spend like 2 3 days just to create a simple HTML email, and right now it's just you can create, I don't know, hundreds of
5 minutes.
HTML in 5 minutes. It was a challenge, and I think for us as a founders and as a people person, like as a people, we have seen all the times, right? So to speak, like we've seen the time without internet, we've seen the time of
I love.
internet being introduced. We've seen the life without AI, and we are seeing the life with AI. So it's kind of interesting, and there is so much like you have to redo and realign your focus every 10 years because of that, but it's still very interesting.
Yeah. Uh, so stumbling upon that fact that in B2B space, like pivoting from B2C to B2B would be like a big challenge from my point of view, because like we started with B2B, we are still in B2B, we will be in B2B for next few years. But B2B comes with their pros and cons, let's say like that. So first thing that I would love to hear is that how did you get your first client and what was the journey there? Because I think that first client is like the first love. So
Yeah.
you need to cherish, you need to nourish it, and so on and so on. But what was the journey? So how did you convince your first client? Because you were a challenger brand, right? At the end of the day, there are many daily fantasy providers on B2B side. We can name a few, but we can skip that as well. But there are many. So what was your approach to that before we dive into the product differentiators and so on and so on? So how did you get first client?
Yeah, I'm gonna be very cliche when I say this that the first client is the hardest one, but it was also true in our case. And it also took the longest to acquire the first customer because, as you said, going into the B2B vertical and especially in this sector, in the beginning, you are nobody, right? Nobody wants to listen to you. Everybody is trying to delegate listening to you to somebody else, and you're just going this never-ending circle of just speaking, and never breaking through. We secured our first partnership from a company in Georgia who are very keen on innovation. I think we got lucky there because they wanted to try something new as well. And we were exactly at the same time on the same table, let's say, just offering just that. And our first client is still with us today, and they are the best client for us because they've been with us from the beginning, and we have worked together to improve our product a lot together because we listen to their feedback a lot.
Mhm.
They are the one, even to this day, they are the ones who are always open to try new things, right? We are like every new innovation we add to our product, we introduce it to them, and they are open to try it, like modify a little bit to their needs. And yeah, that's as you said, like our first client is the most
Okay.
important one for us, even to this day.
One question there. Did you had a product ready when you were talking with the first clients? Like, what was the product?
Most of our product was ready
Mhm,
because, as I said, we started out in the B2C vertical, and we moved, and basically we finished our B2B products with their integration because only part
mhm.
what was left was the integration side to set up the integration of our product. So we were just working with them, and yeah, I think you can say that our product was ready.
At least say that 90% was ready and
Yeah,
10%
90, 90% was ready, and 10% we got done together with the integration because that's what was left anyways to finish our product.
yeah. Okay. Getting the first client, I understand the journey. It was by chance, like correct place, correct time. But like, what was the journey after? Because convincing the first client, is always hard. Like everybody, when we started to be in this industry, was asking. For example, for me, was the biggest challenge was that where can I see your product live? Where can I see? Where can I experience it? Where can I play with it? So on and so on. We are gamification platform providers. So, for example, where can I see your wheel? Like actually working, what is the data behind it, and so on and so on. And we had like a similar journey. Our first client is with us. It helped us in many ways, like develop our product, our platform, and so on and so on, and even tested us, let's say like that, on a much bigger scale rather than we intended to do. But after the first client comes the hardest part, right? What about the first 5 clients, first 10 clients, first 20 clients? Can you tell me a little bit, because you cannot manage it in the same way as you approached the first client, right? So what did you change? And we are in B2B space. What's your hack, let's say like that, for that?
Yeah, I'll start from the beginning. What you mentioned, our first client, even though you can say that your first client is always luck, right? You need luck to secure your first client as well. But us being in this industry for a long time, we also leveraged lots of personal contact
Network. Yeah.
to sit on the right table. We got lucky that they wanted to take a chance on this product, the totally untested product, right, on the market. After that, as you mentioned, it helped greatly when you can just showcase your product and you can say that, yeah, my product is live on one of the biggest operators in Georgia, right? So you get a lot more respect after that statement. Right now, we are, I think, if I remember correctly, already on 7, 8 clients, many more still aligned. And you mentioned that you can't treat every client the same because the resources are so finite. And let's say if our first client, everybody was involved and like everybody was in the support chats and like being panicking, this is wrong, there is a bug, we need to fix it, so everybody please get on and let's fix this now. You can't continue forever. Right now we are trying to put a certain system
Mhm.
within the operations of our product, and we have introduced customer success managers, people who are working directly with the clients and working them from beginning till the end, helping them in the operations of this product, helping them in marketing, sharing marketing insights, taking care of if something goes wrong, fixing bugs, etc., etc. So I think this is the hack we found, which is working very efficiently right now, is the customer success managers, not just account managers, right? The success managers, because we want this product to be successful. So we're going to do everything for this product, which is within our vicinity. We share the expertise, we share insights, we help them manage tournaments, giving them marketing suggestions. And we've seen that this is working quite well so far.
Okay, understood. One thing that I would love to dive in also is the fantasy landscape as well. Like, I think there was a, from my point of view, there was a big boom in fantasy DFS, like space, but after legalization, it became like a side product core to the sport. But like you are much more closer to the industry and you know much from the inside. Can you tell me a little bit about uh like what's the landscape right now, and how it is changing, like last 2 years, like what is fantasy right now, what's the state of fantasy right
The good thing is that the competition is growing. 2 years ago, there were like lot fewer competitors and lot fewer interest in this market, and we just see right now that it's increasing, and lots of institutional players are trying to have their own in-house fantasy solution and offer them to clients. This is very good because as it, for us and for me personally, it's great because when you're starting to do like a startup, you have certain projections, you rely on certain research, etc. And when you see that this is coming into fruition and becoming real, you can't be happier. That it just gives you another reassurance that you are on the right track. So right now, there is a growing interest across the industry. Fantasy and daily fantasy sports was considered to be a purely North American product a couple of years ago. Right
Okay.
now, it's not the case. So it's becoming popular everywhere in the world.
I would love to also understand what is the latest trends in daily fantasy sports. So I know and I've heard that many other sports are coming into the play. So like it is not only focused right now only on football, right? Basketball is getting popular, NFL is getting popular. I've seen even Formula One fantasy like ran by officials. So what's the story there? So how it's evolving?
It just follows basically the sports popularity in the different locations. For example, in the USA, NFL is the biggest fantasy product
Okay.
because NFL being the most popular sport in USA. Second is basketball. For example, in India, cricket is crazy popular. In Europe and Africa, football is popular. Other niche sports are becoming more popular as well as Formula One is making a comeback into a
Yeah, I
mainstream
agree.
again. Fantasy is becoming popular, so it follows the popularity of sport. I think in a certain region, in
Yeah.
South Africa, rugby is popular, and so fantasy of rugby is popular as well
Yeah.
there.
I've even seen fantasy for golf, if I remember it correctly, and I was like amazed what should I do there. Okay, so cycling back to fantasy games and like popularity. Thanks for the insight. So in every country, I think that your biggest challenge right now, what is your biggest challenge, by the way? It would be interesting from what I hear from you, like maybe adapting to new sports, the fantasy on B2B solution, it would be a challenge. Maybe like data in a currency might be a problem for you. So what are the biggest challenges for you as a founder and you as a company in the fantasy space?
Biggest challenges, I would divide them into few categories, right? Obviously, the biggest challenge is to grow fast and just get
Okay.
on board more and more clients. So biggest challenge is to scale up fast. Operational wise, biggest challenge is when you are onboarding the new specific league or specific sports just to have it every detail working flawlessly. Because as we've seen, working the fantasy for the football was quite challenging. Sorry, even though we've been playing football fantasy for more than 10, 15 years, it was still challenging. And when you have to add new sports, for example, basketball, cricket, NFL, there is an operational challenge just to get everything right. And another operational challenge I would say is that when we are giving our clients chance to have a very specific fantasy for very specific leagues, right? So, for example, you may be operating in, I don't know, South Africa, and you'd like to have a fantasy for South African domestic football championship. We are able to provide that. But right now, we just created a couple of days ago, we just launched fantasy for Colombian league. And biggest challenge was to kind of investigate the championship itself, understand the players, understand the teams to make the game as engaging as it is for the very well-known domestic championship as Premier League or international one for the Champions League, right? So that's the operational challenge we have.
Mm.
And yeah, that's
Yeah.
basically two
On
biggest challenges, I would say.
that level, like I think that your partners for data providing, like data accuracy, should be quite well checked, right? Because some of the countries that you mentioned might be provided by the biggest players, like for example, Sport Radar, Genius Sports, and so on and so like big players that are on the market. Going into the specific country, specific leagues, that might be a challenge. For example, it's really hard to get X countries, X leagues, like data that you need in order to construct the fantasy itself, right? So you need like a really personal, not personal, but players' data, right? Performance data. So that would be quite a challenge as well. And how, by the way, do you have one provider for sport data, or do you manage to do a different types of integration with different operators in order to like get more accurate data?
Yeah, data accuracy and data integrity is the driver of the fantasy game because fantasy is a data-driven game, right? Whatever
Yeah.
happens in real life is translated into fantasy points. That's the one single most important concept of the fantasy game. So if your data is
Or of
wrong,
the fantasy game.
yeah, if your data is wrong, then everything is wrong on your game, right? Fantasy points, leaderboard points because somebody got wrong player data, they scored wrong points, they everything just so it's data, data, data. We had to actually change a couple data providers until we arrived with our current ones because of the data integrity. Our first data provider, even though they were very good and technically sound, we saw some discrepancies in data and just was impossible to correct the data after the fantasy tournament or fantasy or after the real-time game is over. The data has to be correct and it has to be correct straight away, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right now we have one provider, but going forward, moving forward, obviously it's a possibility to onboard different data providers for specific sports, right?
Yeah.
But right
Uh,
now, yeah.
I think that I'm asking this from my personal bet experience as well
Your
because
personal, I'm always, how to say, like scared when you mention that the question is from personal because we've been through so much. I don't know what's coming. So
yeah, always being on alert, right? Yeah,
yeah.
because we as a company went through the hell of that because we had a well-established provider at first. By the way, we are doing free-to-play games, so it's like not a fantasy itself, but like a prediction game, jackpot games, and so on and so on. Data accuracy was important here as well because we done a player stats, player props, and like guessing the spread and so on and so on. And we went through three providers already, and our last one is the most suitable one so far. But regarding choosing the well-established provider versus like newly, let's say, challenger data provider. So I think what goes into your mind, let's say, because I have some my points, but I want to know also your point. So price is important, the coverage is important, the accuracy is important, but what else is important? Because from my point of view, big brands working with startups is total hell because you cannot get the support that you need from them.
Interesting question. So the most important factor again for us and probably but for us mostly because we use so many variables within the stats. It's not just who won or who scored the goal, right? We calculate the defensive success, right? Rebounds, I don't know, interceptions, goalkeeper saves, etc., etc. So our data and our data has to be very granular, very, very specific, and it has to cover lots of variable stats. So for us, again, is two most important factors are correctness of the data and variables
We
counted
think
during the game. Again, and
one question here.
yeah,
Different providers of sport data calculate different things, and you mentioned quite specific ones. For example, defensive success. And let's say, like, if we take two different providers, one provider would calculate defensive success rather strange rather than another one. For example, we had the same point for outs. Like, if the out is done after the main, let's say, after the overtime, it didn't count it, for example, in the main times. We had that
throw
small.
in. Sorry to correct you on a football term, but it's a throw in.
Yeah, sorry, sorry.
Yeah, throw in.
Yeah,
So to
I
not get
mentioned, yeah, I mentioned it
to
in
not
Georgian
confuse to not confuse
English.
the listeners. Yeah, obviously we get definition of stats, how they are.
Yeah.
So defensive success is basically our creation, our fantasy creation. But what goes into defensive success is various variables, right? So we call defensive success successful tackle, successful interception, successful block shot, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So you have to, me personally and our staff, that's how we do it and how we arrive that our current data provider is correct, is that they send us the stats, how they are collecting and calculating, and we just set this was the best part of first years of our startup, right? We just sat down and watched games, and even with
Review every
e-
intersector,
e-
right?
even with my wife, I was saying that, honey, like I have to watch the game. I'm not watching out of interest or just to enjoy. Like it's my job, it's my requirement. So that was the hack that we had to achieve. That like loving sports and watching sports became like the mandatory to check the stats, right? So, but on a serious note, yeah, we just watched constantly every game, and we counted ourselves all the interesting, let's say, questionable moments. We took
Hmm.
the notes during the football match, and then we went back and double checked the stats and how it was counted. And we went back and forth with the data provider to understand how everything was working. This is how we arrived to the final how to say, the scoring system
Final.
within our game. Yeah, it's very important because some data providers do not count everything after 45 clean minutes. So
Yeah,
added time by referee in football. Let's say they're gonna add 10
even
minutes
sometimes more.
to each half, and after the 2008, after the World Cup, it's been increasing. Well, yeah, it's those little things that make everything count in the end. And if they are broken, whole customer experience is broken.
Yeah. And one important note there is that you are a B2B provider, right? So you provide services for your clients, customers, and are they able to double check the stats as well? So how do they do that? Like, what is the steps that end user might take in order to see that everything works fine or not? How do you manage that as well? Like, it's one.
Obviously, if anybody who wants to double check why something is calculated in a way, we provide full integrity. And
Mm,
obviously, we've been operating in Georgia, CIS, Africa, LATAM, etc. We get the questions from the end users that I should have gotten certain fantasy points, and obviously
mhm,
you need to provide explanation why and what happened. So it's
mhm,
full integrity, and yeah, it's very straightforward process, and you provide explanation why certain interception was counted as interception and why certain assist was not
yeah,
counted as an assist. So it's all those little things, and as I mentioned, the great team of our team members, the customer success managers, they are handling everything. So
all the type of issues.
if
Yeah.
there is something that needs checking with data provider, they immediately check it with data provider, and they streamline the whole process between us, our clients, and end users and data providers, and all these
Yeah.
little things.
I think that we found a small hack there, to be honest.
Yeah,
We have a provider that is a provider for one of the biggest scoring websites,
yeah.
and how we manage it, like whatever is there is in our
Yeah,
system.
that's also the case in many things. You just say that you rely on some very
It's
well known, already established brand. Even the sportsbook operators do that, right?
yeah,
They just say that we count everything as is shown on the X website.
yeah. And that is a small hack because you have like same provider as their that big website, so that solves everything. No,
Yeah,
nobody.
because people usually double check on certain websites the data. You can't watch every football match, right? So you can watch the central match, and in most cases, the stats for central matches are always correct. It's
Always
those
going
very less known teams,
niche.
lesser popularity games that might have some problems. So you just have to rely on something. And what better way to rely on the biggest, like scores prediction or scores result website. So it's a very very effective way of fixing that problem.
Yeah. Um, so I have to touch upon that topic that I think that I will see you in 1 week somewhere near sunny Portugal. I have to ask,
Unfortunately,
you
unfortunately,
are
I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm not going. My partner is going there because we have some some stuff in Georgia.
Yeah. Like my question was how important are these kind of events for you as personally for you and also for HeroPix as a way to grow and way to network. So what is your experience and how many events are you attending on yearly basis?
For Hero Picks games, these are the most important. These are the most events. Obviously, the next one, the international one, and even okay, like the same importance carries the events which are local. For example, the Tbilisi SPC, which is around the corner in October. It just allows us to speak to a regional stage and speak to the most interested people in this region. And when you're from this region and somebody's coming to see what's happening here and like all this innovation is here, they pay higher attention.
Yeah.
For us, all these types of events are very important because this is the actually these are the places where we do our biggest sales or lead generation, and the in between exhibitions is just following up with the clients, just fine tuning the details of the partnership, and you might need couple exhibitions to close the deal finally, but they are very important.
I love the part that you need some like two or three exhibitions to close the deal. Like
Yeah.
that was, I think that that was the hardest thing to learn. And you were, I remember that 1 year ago when we were taking off, like it was like first few months that we went live and so on, and we were struggling with operational part and we were struggling with the scaling and so on. And I had a call with you and you were mentoring me in a way that you have to learn to wait. And that was
Yes.
like, I still remember, and I still cannot do that, to be honest. Like,
I can't do that either.
yeah,
In,
you were,
even though I was sharing the experience to you, first couple years, couple months was the hardest to learn that you need to wait and you just need to accept that there are some things that you can't really control.
yeah, I still remember that. And every time that I have a panic attack or I have a, like when I go home and I have like total breakdown, like I'm my own right path, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I always remember that, yeah, he said that I have to wait another 6 months in order to close that big deal or close that something. And by the way, I like preparing myself for 6 months journey with the client that I really want to work with always comes in a benefit that if it's closed like earlier, then it's a bonus, right? So
Yes.
there are many upsides to preparing yourself mentally in order that B2B works in a different way rather than B2C because we've been in on B2C side for a long, long, long time.
So you have
One,
to remember how long you made the B2B clients wait when you were on a B2C side, and when you
yeah,
remember that, you understand that now you're just on a different side of the stick right now.
yeah. I think that I remembered one cool things from our B2C experience, and I want to talk about that. Running a fantasy game from B2C standpoint come with the cost, of course, bonus cost that you have to give away within the fantasy, but at the same time, it has to be proven that it's working. So what as a platform provider or as an operator, I should look into when I'm running a fantasy games on weekly or daily basis. So what are the KPIs that customers are looking into and what is your recommendation into what customers should look into when they are running the fantasy games?
Two most important KPIs, I would say, are acquisition and retention numbers. We always suggest to our clients to leverage this product as an acquisition and retention tool because the game itself allows you to modify the fantasy and leverage it as an acquisition and retention tool. So for acquisition tool, you can leverage free-to-play tournaments quite high, and you can just invite people who are not registered on your website to try and participate in fantasy tournaments, completely free to play. And for retention, we allow our clients to create very segmented private tournaments.
Mm.
We call it private tournaments, and the private tournaments are only visible to certain group of people, so they can customize these tournaments based on each segment, customize the prizes, entry fees, etc., etc., and just speak directly to the core segment for what they want to listen and what they want to see, right? Not everybody wants to see same prices, same entry fees, etc., etc. So we allow our clients to differentiate the product for their users already. And these are two most important directions we tell them. And obviously, if done correctly, the customer lifetime values are increasing in the end, and engagement rates are increasing, and our clients are seeing the fantasy allowing extension of their retention rates, customer lifetime value, and just driving engagement rate through the roof. And on the bonus side, the fantasy product also allows a great content marketing to be done year around. This is a package which comes with many, many benefits. And hardest part for us right now is to make sure we explain everything to our clients and to make sure that they understand and they are using this product in a full capacity.
Okay, yeah,
You
quite a lot to think.
you didn't you either you didn't like the answer or the yeah
No, no,
I'm
I knew
joking.
the answer because yeah. I know the answer because we are in free-to-play space as well. So retention rate and acquisition rate based on the different mechanics of it. Like, for example, we have jackpot games, like you have to guess exact number of questions that is asked, like that works pretty well for acquisition purposes. And if it's free-to-play, even more, like it sits on top of the funnel. So it helps like customers to get easily involved with the platform. Then it's transferred into the CRM, and then CRM can work wonders because
Obviously.
they know what leagues they are playing with, what are their favorite teams, and they can work wonders to convert them into real money players. And also, like retention games, from our point of view, are leaderboard based games or quiz type of games that really helps for data enrichment and weekly or daily retention. And we always say that like if player plays more than 2 or 3 games, he's ready for transferring to the pay to play customers, and
Yeah,
then when it's
for sure. And also what we've seen amongst our client as well is we just started to do it recently, and the cross-sell opportunities is huge between their
yeah
products. The fantasy can be a very good bridge product between cross-selling into two main verticals, which is sportsbook and casino. So fantasy can be a very natural way of cross-selling between these two products. You can offer fantasy tournaments to sportsbook players, and the prizes can be casino, or vice versa. You can offer
yeah
fantasy tournaments to casino players, and prizes can be sportsbook related. There is a lot you can do with this product. And as I said, the hardest challenge for us right now is to make sure we explain everything correctly and in an understandable manner to our clients and potential clients, because fantasy can be a quite challenging game to play. It's a skill game. You need a knowledge of sports, etc., etc., to play and enjoy it. But we also trying to fix that gap, building AI virtual assistant, which helps you create a team, which
mm,
helps you take you
nice.
through the process of team creation, what to look for in the team creation. So it's a thing of like always developing and identifying the issues and fixing them.
Yeah, because like from my understanding, like from all the free to play games that there are, and as far as we are involved in free to play games, like fantasy sits on more like a skill side rather than like a luck side, let's say like that. So that is also one important thing because customers should know about sports, should know about the players, should know about their performance. Sometimes I've heard that not the best players are the fantasy players. Like maybe some mid-tier or low-tier players might get much better stats for fantasy. By the way, I've never played the fantasy, like only few times,
I'm
like
so
because I had to.
disappointed. I'm so
Yeah,
disappointed.
I know,
We need to
I know.
fix that. We
Yeah,
need to
I
fix
know,
that.
I know. I've been bad on that side. Like I've played all the free-to-play games there are, but when it comes to the skill, like I get easily bored. So I only played a few times because of I wanted to test your product as well, if you remember,
Yes.
just because like that I was involved in that. But all in all, like it sits on the skill side, and that's really, really good from player perspective because they really want to show off, right? So I've learned that during my B2C years that biggest break is when you can confirm that you know football, basketball, NFL, like any sport so good that you can beat first of all your players and then bookies. So that is the driver behind the customer itself. And that's good. By the way, we are reaching a point where I have to ask you a
Okay, and
special.
again with the suspense. Okay, shoot
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. So be on alert and be ready. So I think that we have a great tradition here. We have a blind question from our guests for the next guest. And my previous guest was Dennis Algreen, the marketing of SBC. And
Hello, Dennis.
hello, Dennis. And I think that he asked what a really, really important questions, and he had like a really good answer around that as well. So I have to structure this question in a way that it
Okay,
fits.
suspense is building.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's too much building right now. So it's a personal question in nature,
Okay.
and how to say it. So the question is about the moment when you felt like you are taking now a next step, and like what is that you are building something great, and you are in kind of coming of specific threshold, like a big threshold that you are right now crossing. It could be really anything. Like, for example, for Dennis, he said that it was when SBC party was done in Museum of like London, Natural History Museum in London. And I've been on that party and I was like, yeah, like industry is going wild after this, most probably. So the question is that is interesting to hear when you felt like you were taking a next step and what was it like that moment? What was it like?
Oh, okay. That's a great question and tough question. What was the first time when I felt that we are on the right track? Probably, obviously, I'm not gonna name the names, but it was when there was this huge client, a huge player in this industry who we've been trying to reach like for 1 year, like nothing was working. All the emails were falling short. All the meetings at the exhibitions were trying falling short. And there was this one day when the person we were actually trying to reach reached out to us himself on LinkedIn, and he was like, "Yeah, I've noticed your product on so and so their competitors' website, so I'm very interested to see what you guys building, etc., etc." And I was like, I was taken aback. I was like, "Dude, we've been trying to talk to you forever. Where have you been?" So I think there was the moment we realized that okay, we might be building something, and it's not only our passion, which we are lying to ourselves that it's going to work out. So that was probably the moment, and so yeah, that's my
That
answer.
felt
So
good, right?
I know your tradition, so I have to ask the question to your next guest
Yeah,
as well, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
But before that, I want to add one more thing. Like,
okay,
I think this is the funny story from us as well. Like we've been prospecting one player as well, like one company as well, like for one whole year before we even had a product because I really wanted to work with their brand and it's wonderful brand. We stumbled upon the things that first meeting, second meeting, third meeting, meeting with the head, then head of head, then director of director, founder of founder, and I don't know, some gods there, but it didn't work out. And after 1.5 years, they reached out to us by themselves.
yeah.
Like they reached out in a way that I remember that we talked about good things and how are you doing, guys? Like, can we work? And now we are making
It's always same when you're building something, and you get noticed without your let's say you get noticed
efforts.
by without efforts, even though we spend all of the efforts to reach to them, but it didn't work. When you're getting noticed and when you understand that okay, we are getting noticed, that's when you kind of it's the market giving you a validation. So that's the I think the most satisfying thing when you're building a startup. So to get a validation, right? So you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't need to panic anymore. Right now, I need to focus on how to make this work because it has a potential to work. It's been validated. validated that it can work. We get clients, I don't know, in Africa, Ethiopia, so in non-African continent like Ethiopia, South Africa, I don't know, Ghana, Ukraine, Georgia. You're like, okay, yeah, this might actually work.
Something is working out
Yeah.
little bit. And yeah, by the way, before we go back to the your question and what you going to ask, like validation is first thing, but have you found the product market fit already, or you are still searching for it?
You can never say that, okay, this is it. You have to
Yeah.
always look for what can be improved. And I think it's just a never ending journey. And for now, every market has a different characteristic and specific. So we're just trying to put a process which will allow us to maximize product market fit on each market we operate.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. So, what will be your question for our next guest?
Okay, what would be my question? So, my question would be to the next guest. First of all, hello, next guest. My question would be, what was the biggest mistake you did in this industry? And what was the takeaway from that mistake, and how that mistake is helping you right now in your decision-making process or anything, if it's helping you at all?
Imeda, that was a really, really nice question for the next guest. Let's see how he or she answers it. So, first of all, thanks for being here. Thanks for being such a great guest. And
Thanks
it
for
was like
having me.
good to go down into the memory lane, how we started and where we are now and where we are going. This was iGaming Accent brought to you by SBC Eurasia. I was your host, Vakho, and don't forget to subscribe to us in your all favorite channels like YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and so on and so on. And by the way, see everybody next week at SBC Lisbon. If you see me, just drop by and say hello. And that's it. I think let's wrap up. Goodbye. See you in
Thank you,
2 weeks.
Akha. Thank you for having me, and good luck, everybody, and especially to you, my dear friend.
Yeah. Cheers.
Ciao.